and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the moronic, bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media and elsewhere. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. That's right, my friends, back in the studio with my illustrious producer. Yeah, I know. I'm telling you, Agent 29, I did miss you. I don't know what you were doing, gallivanting around, all this representing people stuff. I really don't understand it. We do enough representation right here on the program. But the truth is, Open Line Friday.
Yes,
it is. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday here on Cowboy State Politics. This is the day where we talk about what you want to talk about. You know, during the week, you kind of have to talk about what I want to. I mean, I'll answer the phone call, but most of the time, it's just kind of on my schedule. Not so on Friday. I put this program at grave risk every Friday and just open the phone lines up for the entire show. By the way, that number is 307-374-8989. 374-8989 is the phone number here in the studio. If there's something on your mind that you want to talk about, whatever it is, go ahead and give me a ring and we'll talk about it. So, Ken, it's Friday. You're finally back at work. We really did miss you here. But so why don't you tell our audience where you were?
Not here.
Well, we know that.
Getting a little bit of feedback there. I was down in Hewlett. Most people think Hewlett is up, but it's actually only about 3,100 feet.
Oh, it's down.
Yeah, down on the Belle Fourche River. They're about the lowest spot there is in the state. And there was a meeting there with the University of Wyoming Board of Trustees members and about a dozen legislators, and we just kind of had a roundtable discussion.
Okay.
And then we had a prime rib dinner.
Oh, of course you did.
Thank you, taxpayers. I appreciate that. If you can't beat them, join them, right?
Evidently. Prime rib dinner for those miscreants.
Yeah.
So what'd you talk about? I mean, DEI or what's happening in CTE or any other acronyms?
Yeah, there was a lot of CTE, some acronyms. Mostly, to be frank, there were a lot of words spoken and very little said.
Yes.
It's kind of what you would expect. Everybody has things they'd like to say, and we all kind of hedge around those.
Mm-hmm.
You know, John Bear was there. He doesn't hedge too much. I don't hedge much myself.
Did they have, now was it, at one time, the UW Board of Trustees had an advisory council? You know, there were several different people, members of the community, so-called members of the community.
All these people need no advice.
Clearly not.
No, it is interesting, though, because this is the second time I've met with them, and to get to meet a number of the board members. You know, I lived in Grable when Representative Greer was in business, and I lived in Thermop. it's kind of interesting to get to know people that you have known about for a while
Yes.
and get to know another side of them, which is useful. So these things are useful, and you get together. What actually happens publicly in front of the cameras and while the microphones are on is basically superficial. It's the conversations that go on the side and in the
Right.
back. Had a very good conversation again with Mike Smith, who's he's the XO in charge of. I have to think in military terms. He's the XO and liaison with the legislature, so he and I work fairly closely
Right.
together. Um, I think it was a good thing. I think they got the message that CTE is important to us, that you need to meet the needs of the people, and that we can't afford to do everything, especially when federal funds start going away.
Well, yeah, and if you go, and you and I've talked about this before, that you go anywhere on the University of Wyoming campus, and it's pretty obvious that they think that they can have anything that they want. I mean, you have buildings that are, oh man, they've got to be state of the art, and it's
They are, and thus far they don't just think it; they've got it. They've got anything they want.
yeah, exactly, and I mean it's all on us. I mean,
And
there was a time in the
well,
legislature.
wait. Let's be fair there. They have a lot of individual donors, alums, and stuff not that give tremendous amounts of money because they like to see their name on a building or something
Well,
like
that's
that.
true, but
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I would rather see all of that.
oh
that's
yeah, the
possible.
university has a gigantic endowment. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
But where I was headed with that is there was a time in the legislature, I think before you even ran for your first term, where it was like every day 70 million for UW here, 170 million, and it was always the number 7 was in there somewhere. It was totally weird. But anyway, we were forking out like wheelbarrows, multiple wheelbarrows full of cash down there. And the truth is, the Cowboy Joe Club, and they're probably the best example. The university comes to the legislature and says, we need to upgrade the stadium. Well, the truth is, they could go to their Cowboy Joe Club, which has amassed a pretty sizable fortune, and get the money that they need. But it's much easier just to come to the legislature and get the money from taxpayers. So thankfully, you guys are in charge, and we won't be seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. We did a tour a couple months ago, and I might have mentioned it. And they were showing us around at some of the new buildings that they've got. And the tour also included an old building that was brand new when my dad was at the university down
Right.
there in '68, and walked through that. And just you can tell the difference in attitude by the construction. Not just that '68 was dated, but it was fairly, even for the time, was fairly plain Jane.
You're
We
pretty
need a
utilitarian.
functional
Mm-hmm.
building. And now it's gone far beyond that, and it's
Opulent.
nice. I mean, if you can afford it, it's great, and it does help attract people there. But that's not really in the spirit of the
You
Constitution.
know, my favorite building down there is the what do they call it? The Geology Museum, where they got the
yeah.
big dinosaur in it.
Yeah, I've got pictures of me as a kid standing out there trying to throw a pine cone into its mouth.
Well, anyway, welcome back. We did miss you on the program, but we're going to begin this morning with some sad news, some extraordinarily sad news. It would appear that Stephen Colbert's show has been canceled. And I know that this is going to come as a gigantic shock to all of you, but the folks at Paramount and CBS, they've decided that Stephen Colbert is no longer profitable. Well, here is what that moron had to say on his show. I haven't listened to this yet, so this is going to be one of those where we just play it and see what happens. Here we go.
My parent corporation, Paramount, paid Donald Trump a $16 million settlement over his 60 Minutes lawsuit. As someone who has always been a proud employee of this network, I'm offended. And I don't know if anything will ever repair my trust in this company. But just taking a stab at it, I'd say $16 million would help. This settlement is for a nuisance lawsuit Trump filed claiming that 60 Minutes deceptively edited their interview with then-candidate Kamala Harris last fall. Paramount knows they could have easily fought it because, in their own words, the lawsuit was completely without merit. And keep in mind, Paramount produced Transformers: Rise of the Beast. They know completely without merit. Now, Unlike the payoffs from ABC and
All
Twitter,
right. Anyway,
Paramount settlement
Stephen
did
Colbert.
not include an
Stop! All right, Stephen Colbert, no longer on TV. I have to say, my friends, I am not brokenhearted. I'm sure his adoring fans are, but I, for one, am not. And by the way, Ken, if you could, while we're moseying along here, could you see if you could find the YouTube video of that 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris? I'll look too, maybe during the break, but see if you can find it. But some other places, some other really good things that I think are in the news. And by the way, on today's program, I've got a lot of different stuff to show you, several different videos. And there was a protest in Sheridan, and we're going to talk about some of the signs that I saw. And, it's always the left that is accusing the right of violence. And it never fails. It's, for everything from January 6th, and I'll admit January 6th was a riot, but that's about all that it was. Charlottesville, you name it. Any chance that the left has to accuse us of violence, well, you'll see it all over the news. But when you see stuff with your own eyes, take pictures of it, and it happens in your own hometown. And I'm not saying there was any violence yesterday. What I am saying, however, is I think there were some folks advocating for violence. But anyway, we're going to get to that in the program. I've got a funny video of J.D. Vance. Of course, how could I not show you the video of the CEO who had his affair outed at a concert on the Jumbotron? I bet. Talk about, and here's the funny thing, no doubt it was with just things are rolling into my head. I can't even keep them straight. But it was with the director of HR for the company. So, fascinating video. Got that one for you.
Well, you asked earlier, if you're the director of HR, how do you out yourself?
Yeah,
they figured it out.
Do you report yourself to yourself, or do you ask for your own resignation? I don't know. Anyway, so lots of stuff to talk about on Open Line Friday. And once again, that phone number is 307-374-8989. But we begin with something we haven't heard for a very long time. Now, this is one that conservatives have been dreaming about for a couple generations, actually. Decades. But Just the News is reporting that Trump says we have a real shot at balancing the budget. Holy crap. And I quote, President Donald Trump said Wednesday that during his second term, there is a real opportunity to balance the budget. A lofty goal that has eluded 4 presidents, including Trump as the 45th president. Between bringing in an unprecedented $106 billion in tariff revenue thus far, shrinking the size of the government thanks to the Supreme Court's rulings on federal layoffs, and continued rescission packages, he said, I have a real shot. Quote, we're taking in tremendous amounts of money. Everybody says so. It's absolutely fantastic. It's tremendous. It's the most amount of money ever. Okay, anyway. You saw that we had a $25 billion surplus last month. And that in and of itself is pretty amazing, that we had a surplus. Admittedly, it's only 1 month. But when's the last time you heard that we actually had more, we brought in more money than went out?
It's been a while. Newt Gingrich is probably dancing.
Oh, yeah.
But the problem is it won't make any difference because NPR won't be there to announce it, and all the people will be dead because they didn't hear the emergency warning system.
That's true. NPR lost their funding too, which, again, we may maybe have to have some like Happy Times or Here Again music. We need Elmo. That's true. We do. Well, I don't know. Elmo's been on kind of a tirade. Well, anyway. So Trump noted that the majority of the current tariffs currently relate to automobiles, car parts, aluminum, steel, but that on August 1st, tariffs will extend to other foreign goods, accelerating tariff revenue that could contribute substantially to an alternative to the Internal Revenue Service. Quote, we could use the External Revenue Service, and we wouldn't need the Internal Revenue Service. But that money is very substantial. It's hundreds of billions of dollars.
Car parts, what if they're used in artwork?
Oh God, you had to bring that up. My friends, everywhere I go in this town, and I do love Sheridan. It's my new home. But I've noticed that there's some artwork that's been cropping up all over the place. And let me just see if I can get you a picture real quick here. But everywhere you go in Sheridan, there's new pieces of art, as if that's the role of government. It's not. By the way, there's this dumb rabbit statue that's downtown, and I actually kind of like it, but we paid $36,000 for that stupid rabbit.
The rabbits are doing what rabbits do, and I expect that sometime in 6 months or so we'll go down there and there'll be 30 little rabbit statues.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, in this town, there probably will be. There is a statue of a rhino. I do like that. I think it's absolutely appropriate that a bunch of rhinos paid for a rhino statue. All right. So here is, let's go ahead and throw this up, Ken. This is the statue that has me all pissed off this morning. Those are car bumpers. And this is on the corner of, it's right on Main Street. It's right by Wells Fargo Bank. And what they are, it is a tower of car bumpers. Now, I don't know how this qualifies as art, but somebody evidently thinks that it does. There's another statue in town that is supposed to spell art. If you look at it the right way, it literally says fart. I'm not even joking, my friends. And yet we're paying for all this crap.
Yeah, that was an extra 6,000 to have that in there.
It was. I'm sure it was. So anyway, my friends, and it never fails, man. I'm in a good mood, and I drive to the studio, and I see something like that, and it just completely upends the rest of my day. And you wonder why the city of Sheridan is facing a budget deficit. Well, it's partially because we spend a whole bunch of money on crap we don't need. And it's, I mean, this happens at all levels of government. It's not just at the federal level. I mean, this happens in counties, cities, town. I mean, it's everywhere. We just spend way too much money on crap that is not part of the role of government in any way, shape, or form. Well, fortunately, though, Donald Trump says we've got a shot at balancing the budget. That's a good thing. Let's see here. This piece ends. Let's see here. Here we go. Quote, in a moment of levity, Trump recalled comments Tuesday from Kenneth Langone, the co-founder of Home Depot, who just months ago called tariffs bullcrap. Of course, he didn't use the word crap. In a course reversal Tuesday, Langone told CNBC's Squawk Box that, quote, look, let me tell you right now, I am sold on Trump. In fact, I'll say this. I think he's got a good shot at going down in history as one of our best presidents ever. Quote, this is a real turnaround because you didn't want to vote for him, Squawk Box co-host Joe Kernan said. Langone responded, I told you the reason. I want to tell you. I'm a believer. What I'm seeing happening is absolutely nothing short of a great thing. I personally think that when the final analysis is done, Trump is going to go down as one of the greatest presidents this country has ever had. And already in his second term, I think that he should have been nominated for at least 2 Nobel Prizes that he earned, by the way, not that were given to him, like the one that was given to Barack Obama for what he might do. It's the most ridiculous load of crap I've ever heard. But definitely 2 Nobel Prizes for sure. He is doing incredible things with the economy. Have you noticed that gas is now under $3 a gallon? Now, that's the first time I saw that, or the last time I saw that, was during the first Trump presidency. Now, again, it's still close to $3 a gallon, but gas prices are coming down.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but during rodeo week, they were well over $3.
Well, yes, I wouldn't suggest that there was any price gouging there. But, you know, if you live in Buffalo, if you've lived in Buffalo or Sheridan for any length of time, you know that there's a couple of things you do definitely before rodeo weekend. You fill up your gas tank, and you go grocery shopping. At least that's the way it was in Buffalo. And, you know, of course, if you live here, you don't have to get a hotel room. But the things that go up in price during rodeo weekend are gas prices, groceries, and hotel rooms. And I mean, I think that you ought to be able to make money with fair prices. But, I mean, it's your business. And if you want to jack up the prices, that's capitalism, baby. If people don't like it, they'll go somewhere else. Speaking of going somewhere else or with our money, Elmo. Poor Elmo. What are we going to do? Well, in the rescissions package, which, by the way, I talked about this, I don't know, yesterday or the day before on the program, was only $9 billion. 9. That's it. Not 109, not 209, $9 billion. That's it. That's all that they could muster.
You realize what you just did?
What's that?
You said only $9 billion.
Yes. Yes, I did.
It's getting to you.
It is. Well, and when you're dealing with numbers like trillions and I see, and I'm about to sneeze, so hit the sneeze button in just a minute. Nope, lost it. Nope. Well, maybe. I don't know. Anyhow, I must be allergic to bullcrap numbers. So $9 billion was the rescission package, and mainly it was focused on NPR. And there was, what was the other thing? Maybe it'll tell me. Anyway, NPR was a big part of it. So from the cow pie.
It was foreign aid.
Oh, yeah, USAID. That's right. LGBT programs in Uganda or something. From the cow pie, in a rare article written by leftist Jimmy Orr, entitled House Votes to Defund Public Media, Gouging NPR and PBS. And I quote, by a 216 to 213 vote, the U.S. House on Thursday approved a Trump administration plan to rescind 2 years' budget from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman voted for the measure, which also impacts PBS and NPR. The measure, which also cuts $7 billion, yep, here it is right here. If I would have read the article, I would have had the answer. $7 billion from USAID will now go to President Trump's desk for his signature on Friday. Wyoming's sole congressional member, U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman, who has called the programming of NPR and PBS leftist propaganda, voted in favor of the act. Quote, the House just sent $9 billion in rescissions to President Trump's desk, cutting woke and wasteful spending. Another promise delivered, and I look forward to continuing the fight to right-size our federal government. In the past, Hageman has said that the public's trust in the national public media outlets has been lost. And I don't know if they ever had any trust, because for as long as I can remember, NPR has always been leftist. Whether their programs, let's hear, All Things Considered, and they have, a number of things that purport to be fair journalism. They're really not. And if you want to get a leftist perspective, turn on NPR.
They did have Click and Clack, the Tacklet Brothers. But, that's one of those shows that easily could have made it on its own.
Absolutely.
And that's the whole point, is if you're putting out a quality product, you don't need supplements. Well, take that, wind energy.
Well, yeah, exactly. And you're exactly right, Ken, that with the free market, programs should rise and fall on their own. Well, all products should rise and fall on their own.
Colbert.
Yeah, it's like Stephen Colbert. The reason why his program got canceled is it was not profitable anymore. Now, he can complain about Paramount or anything like that, but the truth is his ratings are in the crapper. And, well, nobody wants to really listen to him anyway. But ratings are terrible, and, they weren't making any money. So, TV is a business just like anything else, just like this show is. Well, we need to get more sponsors, which, by the way, if you want to be a sponsor of Cowboy State Politics, shoot me an email. The address is david@cowboystatepolitics.com. Well, anyway, so the House voted to defund NPR. Now, I want to just talk about this for a minute, Ken. You not to pick on you for your advanced age, your vast experience, but for as long as I can remember, NPR has not been fair and balanced. Even when I was really little, and there were my sister and I used to watch Reading Rainbow, and yes, we watched Mr. Rogers. But even so, those programs, to some degree, were pretty biased.
They always have been. I remember one time you couldn't get a lot of radio stations where we were living, and I came to my dad and I said, I've been listening to NPR lately, and the look on his face was kind of priceless. And I said, I know, but at least they can speak proper English.
That's true.
And when you listen to a lot of the local shows, they're so bad.
It's terrible. Like, the enunciation is bad, pronunciation is bad. But there again, it's homegrown media. Well, just to give you an idea of where NPR is at and where PBS has been at, their CEO was in front of Congress not that long ago. And again, this is another one of those sound bites that I didn't quite prep for today, but let me go ahead and play it. Just listen to this.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that.
Okay, so hold on. This is, what is her name? Her last name is Marr. But anyway, she is the CEO of NPR and PBS. And she's sitting in front of Congress, and my new favorite congressman is questioning her. And he's done this with a number of different people, goes into their social media and just pulls down all of the posts. And so I know I've played this on the show before, but just go ahead and give it a listen here.
As I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
I don't
You
think
believe
so.
tweeted
Statement
that in
comes from-
reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't. You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. How white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I have never said that,
Here
sir.
it comes.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt, yes, reparations, yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal.
And the thing I love about Gilkey is his last name. Anyway, the thing I love about him is he waits. His timing is perfect. Yes, you did. You tweeted that.
He's doing exactly something that I endeavor to do, and some other non-disclosed legislators are trying to do the same thing. And it's basically a military tenet. You don't ask a question unless you already know the answer.
Exactly.
You know, and it's related to trust but verify.
Well, yeah. And if you're one of these Congress people, you've got the staff, you've got the all the research powers of anything that you could want, and you should have the answer beforehand. And that's exactly what he does. Holding people accountable, which is exactly what I try to do, what we try to do on this show, and say, hey, here they are. Make up your own mind.
Yeah, and that's that soundbite we featured the other day with Rachel. That's what she was doing. She understands, and these people just totally unprepared because they've never been challenged.
Well, and that's honestly, Ken, not to toot my own horn, but if you don't toot your own horn, nobody else will. That's one of the reasons why Cowboy state politics was a success from the very beginning, because all these jokers down in Cheyenne, nobody had ever challenged them. And nobody had ever exposed what they were doing. And it was so easy to catch them saying stupid stuff because the Wyoming media would never report on it.
Here's a horn toot for you.
Exactly. All right. So next story here. And this one, again, is one of those revelations of the blatantly obvious. But it turns out that D.C. judges are predisposed against the Trump administration. I know. I was shocked to see this myself. But this is a piece by Margot Cleveland, and it's, again, this is just one of those places where the left absolutely reveals themselves, and they are so unused to, I don't even know if that's a word, they are not used to being exposed. And so they say things in private, and they never expect that those things are going to become public. And I quote, "The Trump administration has been doing its part, but the lower courts remain rabid in their attack of the rule of law." Federal Judge James Boasberg advised, listen to who he was talking in front of, Chief Justice John Roberts and some 24 other judges, that his D.C. colleagues were, quote, concerned that the administration would disregard rulings of federal courts leading to a constitutional crisis, according to a memorandum obtained exclusively by the Federalist. That Judge Boasberg and his fellow D.C. Circuit Court judges would discuss how a named defendant in numerous pending lawsuits might respond to an adverse ruling is shocking. Equally outrageous is those judges' clear disregard for the presumption of regularity. a presumption that requires a court to presume public officials properly discharged their official duties. During the week of March 11th, so this is before all Boasberg started coming out with all of his rulings against the Trump administration. So he's sitting in front of in front of the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, and they're having a conference, a judicial conference. Well, they met in Washington, D.C., and for the first of its two regular meetings, as the U.S. Court's webpage explains, quote, the Judicial Conference of the United States is the national policymaking body of the federal courts. The Judicial Conference consists of Chief Justice John Roberts, who presides over the body, as well as the chief judge of each judicial court, the chief judge of the Court of International Trade, and one district judge from each regional circuit, making for a group of approximately 30 judges. While the Judicial Conference mainstay is considering, quote, administrative and policy issues affecting the federal court system and making recommendations to Congress concerning legislation involving the judicial branch. But in a memorandum obtained exclusively by the Federalist, a member of the Judicial Conference summarized the March meeting, including a working breakfast at which John Roberts spoke. Quote, Chief Justice Roberts expressed hope that that would not happen, and in turn, no constitutional crisis would materialize. But you see, Boasberg and the rest of his judicial cohorts had raised concerns that the administration would disregard rulings of federal courts leading to a constitutional crisis. And so, and the implied action they were taking here is to act presumptively, to act ahead of time. So in other words, they have a defendant, albeit he's the president of the United States, and already before the trial has ever happened, before they've seen any evidence, before they've heard any arguments, they've already decided how they're going to act, what their ruling is going to be. This is the exact opposite of the way our judicial system should work. And that they were arrogant enough to say it in front of Chief Justice John Roberts is amazing. Now, nobody's ever going to argue that the Chief Justice is a conservative. He's not. He's not. I mean, you can blame him for Obamacare and a whole bunch of other crappy rulings, but he is the guy that's in charge of the U.S. court system, the U.S. Supreme Court. He was leading this body, and the arrogance of these judges. And, you know, we all expect that when you go to court, you're supposed to be judged fairly. But we all know, given the last, 4 to 8 years, that perhaps in some cases the decision has already been made. And one of the problems in Wyoming, and Ken, maybe you have some thoughts on this, but one of the things that we all know is if you take a case to court, the likely judgment of it is you don't have any standing. I mean, I have lost count at how many cases have been thrown out of court because of a lack of standing.
It sure does seem to be that way. And just incidentally, one of the people that was down there in Hewitt was Representative Martha Lawley. Did speak to her, and she's busy for a couple of weeks, but she is interested in coming in and talking about this very issue.
I had a great discussion with her at the Ramaco ribbon cutting. And I mean, we were just talking about, a couple of different issues surrounding the Wyoming judiciary. And one of those was, all right, Martha, you've got to admit that the way we pick judges is kind of a little bit messed up. I mean, we don't even confirm them or anything. It's just whomever the governor wants, he gets.
Just mentioning for those that may not know, Martha is an attorney.
Yes.
So that's why her name comes up in this.
Yeah, and you know, actually, we had a great discussion, and I think that we both at least decided to have a discussion about, all right, so do we confirm judges? Do we change how judges are selected? At the very least, it deserves a little bit of scrutiny, because think about who is now on the Wyoming Supreme Court. Attorney General, the NAG, Bridget Hill. Former Attorney General Bridget Hill.
Yeah, and I probably shouldn't say this without consulting her first, but I sat in Kate Fox's office for quite a while she was the head of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice. And, you know, it might be possible she'd come on and throw her side, because she has a fairly compelling argument for what they do. Obviously, you would have to be able to get it passed.
I would love to have Kate Fox on the program.
I'll reach out to her, see if we can get that.
I think that would be a fascinating discussion. But you know, all across the board, not just in Wyoming, but all across the country, there are examples of courts who I mean, I don't know. I try to be pretty open-minded about this whole thing, but they all seem to be very, very biased. And it's, there are a lot of arguments that have been made that the Wyoming Supreme Court is very, very, very liberal. And I mean, it makes sense. Who's been the guy that's been appointing justices? Our liberal governor, Mark Gordon. We'll have more when we come back. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live, burning through another busy broadcast day on the program. Doing what I was born to do, my friends, with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program. It is Open Line Friday on the show. And the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. Before the break, we were talking about federal judges, state judges, and how a lot of them seem to be pretty darn biased. Or at the very least, I mean, just take Melissa Owens, for example, district judge down in Teton County, and she's had I'm sure this is just a coincidence, but she's been the judge on all of the challenges to the abortion law, except for the one that she kicked back to Natrona County, which is like the only good decision that she's made in a while. But in her ruling on the abortion ban, she literally made up law out of whole cloth in her ruling. It literally says that abortion is health care. That's not the role of the judiciary. The role of the judiciary is to judge facts. That's their job. It's not really to interpret anything. They're supposed to look at the four corners of the law and say, well, it means what it says, and it says what it means, period. And and here's why we think that things are biased. And I personally believe that they are. But there's two competing worldviews about law. One of which is that laws mean what they say, and they say what they mean, period. And the other is that laws are a living document, that it changes with the times. And I absolutely reject that. I think our founders were brilliant. And, I just think it's crazy. So let's go ahead and take a call and just we'll pick this up on the other side. Welcome to Cowboy State Politics. You're on the air. How are we doing this morning?
I'm all right. How are you, David?
I'm doing good. Who am I talking to?
My name is Jeff.
Hey.
And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, hey, what's on your mind?
I have a number of things. I wrote down some notes here. I got some compliments I wanted to give you. I like a lot of the content of your show, and I like a lot of the ideas you espouse. But I also wonder where you take how you handle dissenting opinions. I was trying to lead with a compliment there, so I didn't jump
Well, I
right into
appreciate it.
the
What do you got?
criticism. But I don't really hear a lot of criticism on your show. So is that something you invite? You'd like to hear?
Sure, yeah, let's hear it.
Loaded question. Uh, I'm not sure where to start. I guess I often hear you joke about people spending like drunken sailors.
Yep.
I wonder if that includes Navy sailors. I wonder how far you take ideas like that back to the source of their income. And this is just a seed of a much larger issue, but it's illustrative. Like when you say spend like drunken sailors, do you mean Navy sailors?
Well, it's I mean it's a the way that I use it is it's a well-known old aphorism that came from Ronald Reagan. They spend like drunken sailors, and then of course he finishes it with, but of course the sailors are spending their own money. But I mean, I think it's just one of those things that Ronald Reagan said it, and I think that everybody pretty much understands the meaning behind it. Of course, I'm not denigrating any of our service members at all. The truth is that I think they work really hard and they can spend their money however they want.
Sure. Yeah. I was unaware of the rest of it, that he modifies it by saying it's their own money. But
Yeah, actually,
yeah,
keep going, and I'll look for the soundbite, and I can probably play it for you. But continue.
well, the larger issue though is I find it interesting where anybody draws a line with morality and stuff, because a lot of things can be reasoned to be moral or immoral. But how you call people rhinos, and I'm on board 100% with what you say there. But I guess as far as my personal views, it seems like sometimes you condone things that I wouldn't condone.
Such as?
For example, like the junk statue, we're on board 100%. The bumper statue there. But then you just kind of you carve out exceptions, I guess. And it seems like you stand for the Constitution, you stand for values, but then you get to a point where like, yeah, but, and then they kind of carve out an exception that I probably wouldn't personally carve out. Like law enforcement is probably a good one.
You got an example for me?
That's probably a really, oh God, where would I start? But I guess maybe even a better, under that heading, but maybe a better example would be, I found it interesting how people drew the line with the pandemic, wearing masks and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That seems obvious to me, and I'm sure we share that. But the idea being there's no science behind it, there's no, it turned from trust the science to trust the scientist. But you look at every other law in the book that would fall into that category. I mean, look at like speeding laws for a really great example. Painting with just a really broad brush, you don't factor in like the weight of the vehicle, many of the conditions. I know they can factor in, and you could go through maybe 99% of the laws in the books, and they're every bit as irrational as wearing masks. And all of those laws aren't enforced by themselves. They require law enforcement. So I see you kind of like get behind the law enforcement wholeheartedly without, when none of those laws, none of those absurd things would ever happen without somebody with a gun, enforcing them. So.
Okay, so first thing.
That's a good example, I think.
All right,
Okay.
so first, let me play for you the Reagan soundbite. It took me a little bit to find it, but I'll play it for you. You should be able to hear it. Here it is.
Higher and higher taxes on small businesses, on family farms, and on every working family, so that government may once again grow at the people's expense. We could say they spend like drunken sailors. But that would be unfair to drunken sailors, because the sailors are spending their own money.
Okay, so clearly what he's saying is that there is a saying that when sailors come into port, well, they have a good time because they've been out to sea for a long time and they just spend recklessly. But he says, well, they're spending their own money because they earned it. And the difference, and the reason I use that when talking about government is the government is not spending their own money. The government doesn't have their own money.
Sure.
It's all yours and mine. And it's point taken. Now, let me just address the whole rhinos, redcoats thing. I try really hard to give you some reasoning behind why I make that claim. Right? It's not just I don't like this person, therefore they're a rhino or a redcoat. Almost always, I shouldn't say almost always, but a lot of the time, um, I can point out. All right, so this person, like Barry Crago, for example, he votes with the Democrats an average of 80% of the time. And where that statistic comes from is from Evidence Based Wyoming, which is a group that they just track how often you vote with the Democrats versus how often you vote with the Republicans. Or if you look at people like the Senate President, Bo Biden, okay, according to YO Rhino, which they're a little bit different group, they do rate legislators according to how they adhere to the Republican Party platform. Well, he only scored a 60% during this last session. And so what I try to do is give you some reasoning behind it. And I think a lot of that, when we tend to throw words like rhino around, a lot of us don't think about, okay, so why is it that this person might be a rhino or might not? Certainly the media tries to paint it as, well, they're just calling people names. Now, the rest of it, like carve outs, let me give you an example maybe one that you were thinking of. So I was talking about the crappy statues in Sheridan, and I make the joke that, all right, no, I'm okay with the big rhino statue. And the reason I say that is it was a bunch of rhinos that paid for a statue of a rhino. And I'm actually making a joke. I don't think that that's the
I
role.
got that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the role of government to beautify a town. If townspeople want to get together and create a park or whatever, I'm cool with it, but not government.
I mean, carve outs. Well, I guess the Navy sailors thing. You don't need to answer this, but the question is, does a Navy sailor spend his own money? I guess that's fundamentally the question there. And you could get into that or think about it, but at what point, if it's like a government agent spending my money, there's any degree that you could take that idea. If someone's a government subcontractor, if they're like a private business who's contracted to build a school for the government, for example, are the carpenters on that school, are those spending government money, or is it their own money? So that was a fundamental idea there. We don't need to get in the weeds of that. But as far as carve outs, I mean, more fundamentally, like you say, you uphold the Constitution and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Fourth Amendment. But then when it comes to masks, you say you're up in arms because it's completely arbitrary, capricious, and illegal. But then I'd say the same thing applies to a bunch of other things that you don't think it applies to.
Okay, Jeff.
For example, speed limit.
Jeff, let's talk about that for a second. This is Ken.
Sure.
Wyoming doesn't have a helmet law. Wyoming,
Sure.
there are a lot of laws. We don't have we have a seatbelt law, but it's not a primary enforced. And the reason is, who gets harmed? If I do something that is only going to harm myself, masks, for example, and the science was never behind the masks. I think you'd have to admit that. But
I think he did.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it kind of comes down to that. We always go back to the harms principle. If there's something that I'm doing that potentially is going to cause great harm to somebody, like driving 100 miles an hour through town, speed limits are appropriate. So the laws are meant, what government is supposed to do is it is supposed to protect individual liberty. And individual liberty sometimes needs to be protected from our neighbor who is exercising his liberty in such a way that it's going to endanger us. So it's kind of keep us all safe together.
I understand. I guess good.
I think I would completely agree with you. There are way too many laws on the books, and there are a lot of laws that shouldn't be there. But for example, the main difference between the mask thing, the mask mandate, and speed limits, who's it hurt?
Yeah, I think my idea though is that I don't think someone speeding is necessarily hurting anyone any more than someone not wearing a mask, first of all. I don't think there's any scientific basis behind it. I don't think there's any real, it's arbitrary. And I can say that because it contradicts itself, because whatever standard you apply to like an F-350 towing a 20,000 pound RV, and someone doesn't have a CDL or whatever, let's say a 10,000, whatever, don't get into the details there, but versus someone on a motorcycle, and you're applying, there is infinitely more threat to the world around them in that person with a 20,000 pound vehicle as a 400 pound motorcycle. Yet you'll apply the same speed limit to both of them. So when you have an internal contradiction like that, it's very illustrative of the arbitrary and capricious nature, and you're painting with a broad brush, and it's kind of fundamentally bigotry, I guess.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, I don't know that it is entirely arbitrary, because I think that, take your truck example, right? They've got a 40,000 pound load on, and they're going through town. Now, I mean, I would agree that if they're doing 20 miles an hour and the brakes fail, they're probably going to plow through the side of a building. I would agree, but the possible damage that could happen if they're doing 50 miles an hour through town and their brakes fail is exponentially higher. Now, let's take an interstate, for example. There are two reasons in my mind, one of which is legitimate, the other is not. Two reasons behind speed limits. One is so that you don't get into a horrendous crash, which I would argue that you could probably get killed doing 30 miles an hour just as well as you can at 70. So part of that is to protect you from yourself, which that reason I would say is completely illegitimate. The secondary reason behind that is for other people. If you are traveling at a high rate of speed, the likelihood, or it is much easier for you to lose control of your vehicle and crash into something else or damage somebody else's property. And so I think that when we talk about laws, I mean, we would like them to be black and white. But the truth is that rarely are they black and white, except of course when you're talking about things like murder. But I mean, that's an extreme one. I would say the speeding one, that's a good example, because I mean, if you are a skilled race car driver and you're doing 100 miles an hour, you're probably okay. But if you're me and driving 150 miles an hour, that's another thing.
Yeah, it goes beyond that. Speed limits are not arbitrary and capricious. They are set up primarily due to reaction times. And so you've got to be thinking, if you're driving through town, there are a lot more things that could go wrong that could suddenly happen. And you need to have time to be able to adequately react. And we also need to be able to compensate for some mechanical failure in that. So that's why the speed limit would be the same for a truck as it would for a motorcycle. Things are happening just as fast, and you need to be able to have that time to react.
Well, it's reaction time plus response time, where the motorcycle has a stopping, it's all rated in car magazines and that sort of thing. The stopping distance might be 60 feet for the motorcycle. And I threw out the number of 20,000, but with modern 1-ton pickups, you can have 50,000 pounds going, pushing 50,000 pounds going down the road with a fifth wheel. They're pushing 40,000 rated for the trailer. The truck's 10. And number one, that thing is not going to stop at all. You have an unskilled driver without a CDL. And when it does impact something, it's going to just destroy everything in its path.
Sure.
Whereas the motorcycle is the opposite. Like the motorcycle is going to be harmed in the same scenario. So you have much longer reaction time, or response time, I should say.
Oh, this I know.
Yeah, the reaction time might be the same, but anyway, yeah, that's like. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, no, I mean, I think that you and I agree on, at least part of it. And I appreciate the call, Jeff. I got to run, man, but I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I did have a couple other points. One is it's nice to have Ken on the phone. I'd like to push back on, I think you guys are good guys in a lot of ways. I don't mean to sound too critical here, but, and I think a lot of people share values, and it's easy for them to turn against one another on more minor things, and it's a real shame. But I've had an issue that I've tried to bring up with Clarence Stivar, and I think Ken has been involved actually. And as far as the values that you've espoused on your show, as people are responding to issues and that sort of thing, I don't want to throw someone, discredit him too much here, but because he did take on an issue that I had, Clarence did, and then I think the number is 3 times that he said, yeah, I'll get back to you on Friday. We'll definitely talk about this. It'll be handled, and then never did. And then months later, same thing. Months later, same thing. And I know there's the one representative you say you have a running tally of like it's been 800 days since he was invited on the show.
1,465. That's Landon Brown.
Thank you. Yeah. I have a similar thing I could run with like Clarence Stivar with like it's been 1,000 days since he said he'd get back to me, and he still hasn't done it, and did so 3 times. And it's been kind of loosey with the football at one point where it's like, you're really going to get back to me this time? Because it's the 3rd time. Like, yeah, for sure. Friday, I'll get back to you, and then just doesn't happen. And if I could, I need to state that for the record, for what it's worth. And one more thing for another show, I'd love you to dig into home mortgages. I think it's a topic that you could probably educate yourself better on. And if I could plant a seed that you could think about, when someone mortgages a home with a bank, the bank prints money, and who owns the home at that point? And I'd love to get into it. I know you said you need to get going, but that's something you could really, I think you're probably uneducated and you haven't thought through who actually owns the home. And there's a really deep issue there, and it's really kind of, at the risk of being hyperbolic, I'd say it's probably like the end of the country, meaning this country relies on a middle class, and when people give up their home ownership and create debt, I think that's the end of the middle class and kind of the end of the country. And yeah, I'll leave it there. But
right on. Well, we'll
for another time maybe.
I'll dig into it. My sister happens to be a mortgage lender, so maybe I'll get her on the program and we can talk about it. Thanks for the call, Jeff. I really appreciate it. We got to run to a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about Mr. J.D. Vance. I know. I just can't get enough of the guy. We'll be back in just a second.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you nonstop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics, live on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, and on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. I mean, let's be honest, it's pretty hard to avoid me, especially if you're a redcoat. But there again, I mean, maybe that's where most of my listeners come from, just, redcoats sitting around trying to figure out what I'm going to say next. But let's go ahead and take another call. Representative Clarence Stivar, welcome to the program, my friends. How's it going this morning?
Good. Just listened to your program, and my name was mentioned, so I'm going to call in and defend myself.
Well, I kind of figured you might.
Real interesting. I know who this guy is. I did help him, and when it didn't go the way he thought it should go, he's relentless. I'm sorry that his problem didn't go the way he thought it should go. It was all done legally. And I really hate saying, when you tell somebody, I've done this, you didn't qualify, move on, that he just keeps going.
Fair enough. Hey, Clarence,
how often... help the guy.
No, I totally get it. But I like hearing both sides. So tell me, you've got a pretty big district, and I know Ken has showed me his email box. But how many calls do you get or emails do you get every day?
Probably around 60 to 65, maybe more.
Yeah. Well, and you, I know.
And then calls I get, this last couple of weeks, I've been on the phone probably half a day.
Yeah. Well,
fires out.
I understand the guy's frustration. I know a lot of people that, they've got a problem and, they're trying to get it resolved. And I mean, I get the frustration and, but I think there's two sides to every story, which is why I'm glad you called in. So how's everything else been going, Clarence?
Just working, having fun.
Yeah, well, I thought that you retired.
I thought I did too, but I think I'm more busy now that I retired than I was when I was working.
Fair enough. Hey, so what committees are you sitting on? I know there's interim committees happening all over the place. What have you been working on over the interim?
I'm on revenue, looking at that, and then I didn't get any subcommittees or anything like that, but I've been working on looking at the guardianship statutes. They haven't been updated in 30 years, and we have a problem.
Okay, what is it?
I'll just leave it at that. There's a problem out here that we need to take care of people getting taken advantage of.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that's certainly one of your jobs for sure. The whole point in doing what you guys do is to, help out Wyoming citizens and make things better. So glad to hear that. Anything else you got this morning, Clarence?
Nope. I just wanted to call and put that out there because
fair enough.
Kind of irritated me.
I imagine it kind of did.
I know who he is.
All right, Clarence. Well, you have a good day, my friend. I got to run. Hit me up sometime. We got to do an interview.
Yep. How you doing, Ken?
I'm very good, Clarence. It's good to hear your voice, and I I feel your pain. You know, the emails, the phone calls, and pretending like you're got more spare time now that you're retired. We're in that same boat.
Oh yeah, it's fun though.
All right, Clarence, you have a good afternoon, my friend. So I just want to not necessarily push back on you guys, but I do understand Jeff's frustration. I really do. Sometimes, and in Wyoming, it's better than in other places. You know, more populous. I mean, it's pretty easy to get a hold of your elected representative here. But still, I mean, there are some serious things that folks are dealing with. You know, taxes, that's a really big one. You know, in Johnson County, I have a lot of sources that told me that the county just arbitrarily raised everybody's property taxes. And we were told the whole time, you know, through the whole legislative session, that it was going to get fixed. And, you know, I understand the inner workings of all of it, and I understand what happened with House Bill 45 and with Senate File 69. I understand the inner workings of it, and I would argue that things are demonstrably better. But when you're the person that's struggling, trying to figure out how you're going to pay your property taxes, and you're told all the time, well, things are going to get better. Well, I understand the frustration. I absolutely do. Not saying that that's what Jeff's issue was. I was just using that as an example. But I totally get it. And you know, sometimes it gets really frustrating when you feel like you're not being heard.
Oh, I get it too. I get frustrated that I can't help more people. Um, in a lot of them, you know, somebody calls with an issue, for example, with the VA. I had 2 or 3 phone calls over the last week about that. The VA really isn't, you know, that's more of a federal issue. In my position, I can help apply some pressure, but there's not a lot I can do. If it comes down to something that is within the state, generally it takes a lot of research. It takes a tremendous amount of calling. We are a citizen legislature. We are supposedly, you know, part-time. And I've said it many times, you know, people say, well, how much time does that gig take? All of it. I go to bed every night with things left undone, with regrets that I couldn't accomplish more. And you know, like Clarence said, it's fun. It is fun because once in a while you get something done. You get something accomplished. But government's a big thing and it doesn't move easily.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But you know, and it's that's one of the fun parts about doing this show is that I get to shine some light on a couple of different things. And there's even on our trip to Jackson, I talked to some folks that are really having a hard time with a number of different things. And so I mean, it's a balancing act. But I appreciate both the perspective of Jeff. Appreciate you calling in, and Clarence. I know what you go through, man. So anyway, so let's kind of talk about JD Vance. Now this is fun. J.D. Vance can't believe what the New York Times just printed. And frankly, there's a lot of stuff that the New York Times prints that I can't believe. But this is from the Daily Caller. In an article entitled, Even J.D. Vance Can't Believe the New York Times Sent Biden Border Bozo to Give Advice. And I quote, when a building collapses, who do you turn to for advice on structural integrity? Now, if you're the New York Times, you promote the word of the remorseless architect responsible for the rubble. Quote, I was one of Biden's border advisors. Here's how to fix our immigration system. Now, this is not the Babylon Bee, my friends. I am not making this up. This is not some gag that I dreamed up overnight while I was trying to get show prep done. This actually happened. A sincere New York Times headline for a guest essay by Blas Nunez Neto. Now, Nunez Neto was, quote, an assistant secretary for border and immigration policy at the Department of Homeland Security under Joseph Biden. The headline was roundly mocked on X. Quote, I hosted a fire fest. Here's how to run a music festival. This is like an arsonist saying they know how to put out a fire. But there's a really funny video, and Ken, go ahead and play the J.D. Vance video. This is great. Check this out. Maybe. Uh-oh, no sound.
Days ago, and I quote, I was one of Biden's border advisors. here's how to fix our immigration system. What would he know about fixing our immigration system? It was the Biden administration that broke our immigration system, so we've been having a little bit of fun around the office. So the Department of Homeland Security, their take on this was, I was Humpty Dumpty. Here's how to sit on a wall. But be careful what you wish for. Now we're in northeastern Pennsylvania. I assume that this is Eagles territory. Is that right? Okay. Some dissension here. We've got a lot of Eagles fans, but not 100% Eagles fans here. But congratulations, by the way, on last year. But this is what a buddy of mine sent me. He said, I'm a Cincinnati Bengals player. Here's how you win Super Bowls. And that cut a little deep. For the football fans out there will know that was not a cool thing for that guy to say.
I'm Humpty Dumpty. Here's how to sit on a wall. But this just shows you how absolutely tone deaf the media is. And you would think that given with what happened in the 2024 election, that the media would have figured out that, you know, the narrative that they're pushing is not resonating with America. But they really don't. They really do think that you're stupid. So the New York Times putting up somebody who worked for Alejandro Mayorkas as an expert on the border is as ridiculous as, I don't even know. I mean, I can't even come up with something dumber than that.
We're going to talk to our correspondent, Juan Valdez.
Yeah, down on the border. You know, he's working hard to get people across the border. Let's see what he has to say. But it's absolutely tone deaf. By the way, Ken, did you ever find that video of Kamala Harris in 60 Minutes?
Maybe. I have a few here. Let me just pull that back up so I can see it.
And this is, you know, and this is one, if you've got it. If not, we'll save it for Monday.
Okay, I'm gonna throw this up there so you can see what I'm looking at, and you pick one if it's your poison.
All right, here we go. Oh no, that's my screen. There we go. No, not what I was thinking. All right, so we'll save that one for Monday.
Later.
But anyway, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, and you see this same sort of tone deafness in the Wyoming media too. So, for example, from the Wyoming turkey vulture, this is a great example. So our legislature passed House Bill 172, which was the repeal of gun-free zones across the entire state of Wyoming. And the whole point is that nobody can really tell you, you know, that you can't keep and bear arms. The Second Amendment is very, very clear. Now, there are some provisions in there which I think are incredibly stupid, one of which said that the school districts can come up with a policy. Well, of course, these radical school districts, like the one here in Sheridan County, which, by the way, I went to a meeting with some of those teachers, and we have some gun-hating teachers that are employed in Sheridan County.
Yeah, we do. The policy, though, is only for employees or people that are working at the school. It's not the public going through.
Right. Now, okay, so let's just talk about that for a minute. First, the constituency, the group of people that has the lowest crime rate in the country is people who carry a concealed weapon. And so if the left's argument holds true, that school resource officers make the school safer, well, logically, you would want to have people who have a concealed weapons permit in the school before you would want resource officers, simply because they commit less crimes. Secondly, there has never been a school shooting in a school that has armed staff. So if your motivation, and this is the argument that we hear from teachers all over the place. Well, it's going to be so unsafe. The school is going to be chock full of guns. You know, people running around with M16s and AR-15s and fully automatic submachine guns. That's the narrative that you hear. The meeting that I went to with all those Sheridan teachers, that's pretty much what they said. And, you know, when I asked them, hey, do you own any guns? Well, no, I wouldn't have any firearms in my house. Well, then you don't know anything what you're talking about at all.
I worked for 10 years in a place where everybody was armed. I spent 6 months where everybody's walking around with loaded machine guns, and nobody got shot.
Well, I mean, nobody on our side. But my point is that it is hyperbole. It is absolute insanity when you're talking about guns. Well, back to House Bill 172, there's a provision in there, stupidly, that says that school districts can come up with a policy. Of course, they're going to create the most stringent policy possible. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with the general public. In fact, the school can't even ask you if you have a concealed weapons permit. Though, legally, according to the law, if you're going to carry in a government building, a school, a city hall, courthouse, whatever, you have to have a concealed weapons permit. But there are other entities in the state that are absolutely taking this to an extreme and thinking that they, too, can pass policies. Now, there is one line in House Bill 172 that I guess kind of allows like a city council to come up with a policy. But again, it's only for employees. But listen to this crap. From the Turkey Vulture, the Wyoming Tribune Eagle. Laramie County officials adopt concealed carry policy for staff, allow open carry in county buildings. First, the city council can't tell the general public where they can carry a firearm. That's not in the law. Now, there is a one phrase. Then we talked about it before the show, Ken. I don't know if you remember exactly what the phrase was, but it kind of vaguely allows a city council to come up with a policy. And Ken's going to pull it up here real quick so we can get the exact phraseology. But let me just go into the article for a little bit. Quote, since the Wyoming legislature's approval of House Bill 172, Laramie County officials have discussed and passed their own concealed carry policy for county employees and an open carry policy for community members. First of all, they don't get to write policy for the general public, but it continues. The Laramie County Board of Commissioners solidified the county's personnel concealed carry policy at its July 1st meeting. According to a resolution, document an eligible employee or volunteer. Now, this is where I have a real problem with House Bill 172 because it has that word volunteer in there. Anyway, you can carry a concealed carry a firearm on county property as long as they fulfill the eligibility requirements. Quote, it just allows our employees to meet certain criteria to concealed carry, County Commissioner Gunnar Malm told the Wyoming Turkey Vulture, which includes having the appropriate certifications as well as sign a waiver regarding the responsibility for their firearm as it pertains to its concealment on county property and in their role as a county employee. To be eligible, an employee must tell their supervisor they wish to conceal carry and complete a notification and acknowledgement concealed carry form. It is also required that an employee be legally allowed to carry a concealed firearm, and they must have a concealed carry permit. Some of the requirements include keeping the firearm concealed at all times, storing the firearm in a holster or locked storage case, never leaving the firearm unattended unless in its locked storage. Gunnar Malm told the county employees are not required to keep their firearm in a lockbox during work hours. They're allowed to keep it on their person as long as it remains secured and the individual complies with state law. So really, any restriction on the Second Amendment is, in my mind, is absolutely unconstitutional. And I understand that there are provisions in House Bill 172 that I guess the argument was, well, we have to put this in there to get it passed. Well, you can see the results of that, and it's governing bodies thinking that they can pass laws. And here's the problem. State law preempts your local ordinances. Before, we fixed that little problem, and that was, I don't remember the bill number, but that was Dave Kinski, and fixed our preemption statute. Before that, technically, counties and cities could pass their own gun ordinances, and there were some of them that dated back to the late 1800s. There was one in Buffalo, Wyoming that is still on the books that prevents any carrying of firearms within city limits. Of course, they, didn't enforce it, but still on the books. And, now we're kind of reverting back to that because you have counties and school districts crafting policy telling you where you can and can't carry a firearm. I mean, it's absolutely wrong.
So here's that bill.
There we go. Good job.
You notice it says nothing in the section shall be construed to, and then look down at Romanet 7. Nothing in the section shall be construed to prohibit a government entity from requiring any employee or student to store firearms within a concealed biometric container or a lockbox. So they can, apparently, for rules,
sure,
make that exception. The other things are all pretty much limited to schools.
Yeah. So, and that's the passage that I was referring to that evidently the Laramie County commissioners have taken to an extreme and said, well, now we can craft an entire policy. And these policies that have been crafted by mostly school districts are absolutely onerous. There was one in Natrona County that was passed. I guess they only have one school district, but It required like 50 hours of live fire training. Do you know how long, how many rounds you can go through in 50 hours of live fire training? The whole point is to make it so onerous that you don't carry your firearm because it's too big of a pain in the butt. And that is absolutely against the spirit of the law. And if the turkey vulture had any respect for the truth whatsoever, they would point this out. But it's of course it's the media, and they're not going to do anything of the sort. Man, it just really ticks me off the amount of liberals we have in our county commissions, on our city councils. And if you need any further evidence, look who's the president of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. It's a Democrat from Teton County. Her name is Natalia Macker. She was the only one nominated, by the way, which should tell you how conservative all of your county commissioners are not. All right, moving on. Something that's a little bit funnier, perhaps. But there's this great piece in the Daily Caller, and it's entitled "Democrat New York City Mayoral Heartthrob Zoran Mamdani is Peddling Leftist Lies." And of course, I mean, he is a radical socialist, basically a communist. There he is. Look at that face. Ah, man. I mean, look at that smile. How could you not vote for that guy? I mean, really. All right, so the piece starts out, quote, "The Democrats have their stalwarts, Representative Jesse Jasmine Crockett and AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Adam Schiff, and the rest of the squad, as all sharp as tacks, I'm sure. Now, the newest flavor of the month is a socialist, communist, New York City mayoral heartthrob, Zoran Mamdani. Mamdani was born in Uganda and is a Muslim. He checks so many of the boxes that the Democrats could go right to the top. In fact, I heard the Democrats already have someone working on a Hawaiian birth certificate for him. One minor problem, he lied on his college applications to Ivy League schools and other elite colleges, claiming to be black or African. Playing up that whole Uganda thing. I wonder why. Both his mother and father are South Asian, a.k.a. Indian. The only difference between Mamdani and Senator Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren is that Mamdani's claim to be an Indian can pass a lie detector test. Saying he's black and Asian might get Mamdani sued by Tiger Woods for trademark infringement. Of course, it is Tiger Woods who patented the space and ran his great golf career with no affirmative action or help from DEI. Now, go ahead and throw this quotation up on the screen, Ken. Quote, the young left thinks that socialism's great offerings are free education, free healthcare, and free housing. Yet, they are not taught history's clear lesson that socialism's three great failures always end up being breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Socialism replaces capitalism, which requires and rewards hard work. We've raised a generation of kids who are averse to hard work. When they hear free markets, they think that the government pays for them. And that is exactly what this Mamdani character is campaigning on. He's also pro-Palestine, defends calls for the Intifada, supports taking guns and raising taxes on white people. Democrats are playing down his extremist stances. It's scary that he was nominated to be the Democrats' mayoral candidate. Wasn't it Thomas Jefferson who said TikTok was why he needed an electoral college? Mamdani is perfect for the young left. Victims of liberal college dogma and student loan debt. They feel we should strive for a much more desirable system of socialism. The type of socialism that has never worked anywhere in the world.
I've been on the Bullwinkle thing.
You have. It's true.
Yeah, kind of a kick there. I'm thinking about, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. Well, it worked in rehearsal. It never works.
Never.
You run out of other people's money.
Yeah. I mean, and the point is, and I love that phrase, that the three things that socialism leaves out every time is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, if you think that this is only constrained to New York City or Minneapolis, as I told you yesterday on the program, it's not. Yesterday in Sheridan, Wyoming, they had a protest. One of those, I don't know what they were calling it, the good trouble protest. Well, anyway, they had a whole bunch of signs and a couple. I'm going to show you a few of them here in just a second. But just so we're clear here, I sent this message. Go ahead and throw it up on the screen to Becky Mix. Becky Mix is the chairman of the Sheridan County Democrat Party. Here's what it said. Hi, Becky. This is David Iverson. I own Cowboy State Politics. I should have put in parentheses, like you already don't know that. I'll be running a story tomorrow about the protest that was held in Sheridan. Specifically, I'll be discussing a couple of signs a few folks were carrying. I thought I'd give you an opportunity to comment, or if you'd be interested in having a discussion on my program, the show airs between 8 and 10 tomorrow. Thanks very much. Now, if you notice in the picture, throw it up one more time, Ken. The little 2 dots there at the bottom. At the time I took the screenshot, she hadn't looked at the message, but she has now. And if you looked at my phone, you could tell, yep, she saw the message. So let me just show you one of the signs. And let's see, let me make this big so that you can see it. This one says, stop pretending your racism is patriotism. So why don't we insult an entire segment of the county? Now, I'm not saying that Becky Mix was responsible for all of these signs, but they did hold a party at the Hub on Smith, which is the senior center, basically, pretty much a government building. I don't know if it's privately owned, but we sure as hell give a lot of money to them. And they held a party to create all of these signs at the Hub on Smith. And this one, stop pretending your racism is patriotism. So everybody that loves this country, in other words, is a racist. Thank you, Becky Mix, for bringing this one to us. How about this next one? Beware, tyrants, we are the storm. Now, I thought that it was only Republicans that were calling for violence. If you're asking me, that's exactly what that one is.
At least it's not a man bun.
That's true. At least he doesn't have a man bun on. But my friends, I'm not exactly sure what that person meant by we are the storm, but that is a common phrase in the left. And the quotation is, we are the coming storm, or beware the coming storm. Now, I'm nicely asking Becky Mix to come on this program, or to, at the very least, issue a public statement saying that her party is not calling for violence when, you can read that. Here, let's throw it up there one more time. There we go. To me, that's what that says. We are the storm. Now, I'd like to know who we is. I'm assuming it's the County Democrat Party. And I would like to know what the storm is that they're talking about.
I think it's interesting as I look at it, the red letters, it's like maybe you can take tyrant or storm out of that, but that doesn't really mean anything. It's just, it's typical gibberish that maybe makes somebody feel good, but it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, I don't know what this is. And there was another one. Let's see here. This one's actually kind of funny. Let me blow it up here so maybe you can see it a little bit better. We need a leader, not a tweeter. I kind of like the president being as transparent as he is. I think it's funny. But the point is, my friends, that words mean things. And, and actually, let's go there next. This is kind of unrelated, but the reason I use the soundbite, words mean things, and let me just play for you the one I usually play on the program. And let's see, here it is.
2 + 2 is 4, not 5 if you want it to be 5. And this is not to be discriminatory. This is to stand up for language. Words mean things.
All right, so I just looked at the clock. So let me explain why I use that one all the time. When we come back, I want to play you that whole thing from Rush in context. Took me a while to find it this morning, but I got it. So here's why I use that. Words have power. Word choice is very important. And if you don't believe me, look at how creative the left gets with words all the time. If you watch them, they are all the time adjusting the narrative and changing the definition of words. For example, saying that your patriotism is racism. But the left are masters of words, and they really do have power. I see no reason why we shouldn't take somebody at their word when they're calling for violence or when they're suggesting violence. Let's be honest, that guy's sign didn't say, stand up and, and riot, but it was an allusion to his brethren, his comrades. Oh, by the way, I got another soundbite for you. And if you don't think that the left absolutely believes all this, communist, socialist stuff. Here's Kangaroo Mike Giroux. Listen to this one.
I understand what he's saying, and I do. I really do. I understand it very well. I understand how the collective thought, how we need to all think as a collective, and we need to have fidelity. Comrades, vote no on Division 1.
Comrades, we all need to think as a collective. All right, so words mean things. When we come back, I'll play you that whole thing in context. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listened to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
This program is only going to continue to expand. Cowboy State Politics is the most listened to conservative program in the entire state of Wyoming. Over 355,000 downloads, 900 episodes. There's nobody that even comes close. I mean, I wish them good luck. I hope that they work hard. I firmly believe that the more voices, the better. It's just, it's really hard to get to the level of excellence that this program exudes. Okay, so that was a little arrogant, but hey, man, I mean, like you said, Ken, if you're not going to toot your own horn, nobody else will. Spooky music. All right, so before the break, I was showing you some signs from the protests yesterday, and go ahead and throw this one up one more time. So this one says, stop pretending your racism is patriotism. Now, the reason why the left uses terms like racism is it's the one of the few words that you can use that you don't really have to provide any proof for, because the connotations behind that word are so horrible that it automatically puts the person you're talking about on the defensive. They're supposed to say, well, I'm not a racist. There's no evidence that I'm a racist. Well, you have to defend yourself, and there is a large segment of the population that is going to believe that regardless, and say, hey, there had to be a reason why somebody called you a racist. But the left are masters at using words. And right now, we are all kind of in the middle, and we're probably at the tail end of this whole pronoun thing. But there's a piece in the Blaze entitled "Louisiana Pastor Fired from Job at Library After Refusing to Use a Person's Preferred Pronouns." And I quote, a Louisiana pastor said he was fired from East Baton Rouge Parish Library after he refused to use a woman's preferred pronouns. Pastor Luke Ash said he was fired over a conversation on July 7th after working as a technician at the library for less than 6 months. That coworker corrected me, said that the person she was training preferred to be called he, and I refused to use those preferred pronouns. Ash described the events in an interview with Tony Perkins on his show, Washington Watch. Quote, I was in a conversation with a coworker about someone he was training, and I didn't use the preferred pronoun. He said they gave me the option to use the person's incorrect biological pronouns, but that he refused. Quote, I'm not going to lie, Ash said. I cannot do it. All right, so one of the reasons why these words, pronouns, all of this stuff are so important to the left is it forces you to agree with something that's not true. So, for example, if we can convince you that a man can become a woman, I mean, and that's something that is so fundamental. Like each and every single person on this planet is the product of a male father and a female mother. Every single person. And we all know that, even Mr. Rogers said it, you know, boys are boys, girls are girls. But if the left can convince you that maybe a man can become a woman or a woman can become a man, what else can they convince you of? Perhaps something like, I don't know, that socialism is good, or that we should all work for the betterment of the collective. I mean, if you're convinced that men can become women, then certainly that should be an easy one to figure out.
This all harkens back to Orwell.
It does.
1984, you know, double plus ungood, that sort of thing. But you keep using a phrase that I'm going to take a little objection to.
Okay.
You say that they're masters at using the words. I think they're masters at abusing the words.
Fair enough.
And they abuse them to the point where we realize that this really doesn't mean anything anymore.
Okay, so yeah, I agree. So they're abusing language. So let me tell you why I use that little soundbite, words mean things. It's because they do. And the words we say convey meaning to another person. Now, I used that little Rush soundbite all over the place, but I want to play for you play it for you in context. Hold on just a second, Ken, and show you what he's talking about. And he's actually talking about marriage and so-called gay marriage. And he's specifically talking about a definition and what that is. You see, because we all have a dictionary, I could go into Diane's library, which is right next door, and bring out a dictionary that's, I don't know, things like 6 or 7 inches thick. But we've all agreed on a common language. And if we can't agree on what words mean, then we can't effectively communicate. So go ahead and play the Rush clip, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Nobody's denying anybody the right to get married. Marriage, there's a definition for it. It means something. Marriage is a union of a man and woman. It's always been that. If you want to get married and you're a man, marry a woman. Nobody's stopping you. This is about tearing apart an institution. This is about destroying an institution. It's not about equal rights and fair rights and civil rights. That's the game. That's the illusion that all this is about. They seek to make us poorer through environmental laws and rules. They don't give a damn about elections unless, of course, they win them. When they win elections, they are said to have a mandate to do whatever they wish. If they lose elections, they turn to the courts, like this judge, and the bureaucracy to move their agenda, and to hell with elections. That's where we are. It is not about gay marriage. Marriage is not being denied anybody. Everyone has the equal right to marry somebody of the opposite sex, which is what marriage is. That's the equal protection. It's not marriage if two people of the same sex get married. Call it what you want, make up a new name for it, but it isn't marriage. 2 plus 2 is 4, not 5 if you want it to be 5. And this is not to be discriminatory. This is to stand up for language. Words mean things. A microphone's a microphone. It's not a mouth. Marriage is what it is. Discrimination is what it is.
All right, so there you go. And the reason I bring that up is we've all agreed upon, well, most of us agreed upon before all this leftist nonsense, on what marriage is. That is a man and a woman coming together to form a union, a family between themselves and God. That is, you can look at Webster's 1828. We can pull out the dictionary that's 7 inches thick in the next room. We can pull out any dictionary you want, and that is what it is. It is not a man marrying a man or a woman marrying a woman. Now, you can, like Rush said, you can make up a name for that, call it something else, but it is not marriage. And when we're watching the news, when we're paying attention to all of these articles, it is so important that we understand and listen to the language and that we're critical of it. For example, we started out the show with this Stephen Colbert moron, and he's saying he got fired because of a lawsuit. No, he didn't get fired because of a lawsuit. He got fired because he's not making any money. And let's just be honest about things. And there's another thing. Let me give you an example here. So another piece, let's see here. This one, I didn't write down where this is from, but the title of the piece is Bernie Sanders spends another $230,000 on private jets to fight the oligarchy. What is an oligarchy? An oligarchy is a rule by many, or rule by a few, rather. A small little group, a committee, whatever you want to call it. Now, remember, they were saying that Trump wants to be a tyrant, right? And the reason that Bernie Sanders is using the word oligarchy is he says that, it's all of these rich people. Keep in mind that Bernie Sanders himself is rich. But anyway, he's trying to tell you that, hey, this is this, benevolent dictatorship that is run by a small group of people, and it's not you, and that's why we have to support socialism.
Yet another example of flagrant projection.
Absolutely.
Look at the Biden administration.
That's where I was
and
going
the
next.
Autobahn. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but yeah, carry on, sir.
Thank you. I spent a whole half hour yesterday on the program explaining why the Biden White House really was the very definition of an oligarchy. That is a committee of people, not one man, not one, a committee running the entire country. That there is a fair argument to be made that that is exactly how this country was run for 4 years. I mean, we can all pretty much agree, and I don't care how far left you are. If you can't agree that Joe Biden was off his rocker and not in possession of his faculties, then you're just not being honest. You're being intellectually dishonest, and you're just lying to yourself. Any person can look at President Biden and say, that guy didn't know what he was doing. So the country was being run by, maybe it was being run by Jill Biden. Maybe it was being run by her work husband. Who knows? Or maybe just a committee of people, Hunter Biden. Who knows? Who was running the auto pen? Now, I gave you a story yesterday of, one of the staffers actually being in charge of the auto pen, that Joe Biden didn't direct all of those pardons, that he just kind of gave some guidelines and said, well, these are the categories. Joe Biden did an interview with the New York Times in which it became pretty darn clear that he was not the one that was directing the use of the auto pen. So that begs the question, who was in charge of the signature of the President of the United States? Because it wasn't him. And I played for you the soundbite from the Oversight Project, and maybe I can play that for you again. You know what? I played it the last couple of days, and I think that you get the point, that it is the signature of the president that guarantees our republic, that the president signs off on, and it literally is his signature. If it's not on there, not legal, it's not a policy. Only the president can sign a bill into law. Well, if you have an oligarchy, a group of people, not the president, who's running the auto pen, then who the heck is running the country? It is an oligarchy. But the reason Bernie Sanders is using that is to try to convince you of something that is not true. Words mean things, my friends. And it's just, the more we go on with this Agent 29, there's no end to it. It just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So let's, you know what? Let's do something that's a little bit fun. I suppose maybe you've seen the news that there was a CEO who was at a Coldplay concert with his mistress, and he got caught on the Jumbotron. Now, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's been telling his mistress for a while that he's going to leave his wife, but this is a surefire way to make that happen. Check this out.
Even if you can offend when it's very sharp. I'm not quite sure what to do. Think we're drunk on you? Yeah. Oh, look at these people.
Wow! Caught on the Jumbotron?
I'm not quite sure what to do. Think we're drunk on you?
Oh, boy. Stop. There we go. Caught on the Jumbotron. Now, how dumb do you have to be to think that you can take your mistress, and you shouldn't have a mistress anyway. That kind of means you're sort of a piece of crap if you're doing that. But take your mistress to a concert, and then you end up on the Jumbotron. Talk about a way of outing yourself. Just absolute hypocrisy. I mean, the arrogance of these people. And here's a question, right? So if you're the head of HR, and that's who that woman was on the Jumbotron, she's the head of HR for this AI company. And so who does she report herself to? I mean, does she report herself to herself, or does she just resign? Or who does he report himself to?
She doesn't have to report anything now.
No, she doesn't. It's pretty much reported. From the Washington Free Beacon. Jill Biden's work husband pleads the fifth in probe of former president's mental fitness. Now, of course he did. Now, and here's the weird thing about the Constitution. You know, you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to incriminate yourself. And the implication is, once you invoke the Fifth Amendment, everybody who is listening shouldn't be presuming that you're guilty just because you took the fifth. Maybe there's some other crime that you would implicate yourself in. And you have the right not to say anything. Well, the trouble is, in politics, when you invoke the fifth, pretty much means you were involved. From the Washington Free Beacon, and I quote, former First Lady Jill Biden's work husband and former Chief of Staff Anthony Bernal refused to testify during a Wednesday interview for House GOP's probe into former President Joe Biden's mental decline, making him the second ex-White House aide to plead the fifth in the investigation. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer said he asked Bernal two questions, both of which the former aide refused to answer. Quote, was Joe Biden fit to exercise the duties of the president? And, quote, did any unelected official or family member execute the duties of the presidency? Bernal was particularly close. He had a particularly close aide to the Bidens, with the former First Lady describing their relationship as a, quote, work marriage. If Joe Biden had been in possession of his faculties, I wonder how he would have felt about that phrase. New York Times reporter Katie Rogers wrote in her February book, American Woman, The Transformation of the Modern First Lady from Hillary Clinton to Jill Biden. He also traveled with the first family on vacations and remained a trusted advisor even after the 46th president's disastrous June 2024 debate with President Donald Trump. The proximity gave him an untouchable status, and that's in quotation marks. The former White House official told the New York Post last year. Bernal's refusal to testify solidifies a pattern in the GOP probe. The former president's White House doctor, Kevin O'Connor, also invoked the Fifth Amendment right, as well as the physician-patient privilege during a closed-door July 9th interview. O'Connor gave Biden clean bills of health throughout his term. Clearly a lie. A healthy, vigorous 78-year-old male who is fit to successfully execute the duties of the president. Ray Charles could see that wasn't the truth. And there were so many lies during the Biden presidency. And it's just, I'm so glad.
You have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Well, Trump is pursuing a damaging and erratic trade war without any strategy, by the way. This guy is moving to foment hate. He doesn't want to shed light. He wants to generate heat. And he's
The funny part is that gaff reel, it's more than 3 minutes long, and I did have a Kamala gaff reel going just in case, just on the off chance that they stole.
So
them.
during Women's
you go.
History Month, we celebrate and we honor the women who made history throughout history, who saw what could be unburdened by what had been. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means.
That she doesn't understand what that means at all, nor does Hunter Biden. I know, we haven't heard from him for a while, but in a piece in National Review, a publication that I don't pay too much attention to, but they've got an interesting article. Hunter Biden chalks up Democrat losses in 2024 to disloyalty to his father. It wasn't that his father was absolutely off his rocker or that they had a crappy vice president. By the way, have I told you my theory of vice presidents? You always want to, Democrats always have to hire one that's dumber than they are. So you had, Bill Clinton and Al Gore. And then we had Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And then Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And who knows who Kamala Harris would have hired? Elmo, Oscar the Grouch, Big Bird. No, Oscar is actually kind of funny. But Hunter Biden, he chalks up these Democrat losses to disloyalty. And I quote, we're going to fight amongst ourselves for the next 3 years until there's a nominee. And then with the nominee, we better get behind that nominee. I don't know if he's been hanging out with Kamala Harris, but Hunter Biden told that to the DNC chair, Jamie Harrison, in a soon-to-be released interview. Harrison is also launching a podcast. Everybody's got a podcast these days. At Our Table. And the former first son will be featured in one of the first few episodes. The interview is a rare one for Hunter Biden, who has largely stayed out of the public view. I wonder why. Something about doing coke off of the rear end of hookers might have something to do with it, or smoking crack on video. Maybe that might compel somebody to stay out of the public view. But here's what he says. And I'll tell you why we lost the last election. We lost the election because we didn't remain loyal to the leader of our party. That's my position, Hunter Biden asked. We had the advantage of incumbency. We had the advantage of an incredibly successful administration, and the Democrat Party literally melted down. Clearly, Hunter Biden is just as clueless as dear old dad. And, the Democrats as a whole, they are in complete disarray. And it's not because they don't have people, in their party that are, are pretty successful people. Like that Shapiro in Pennsylvania. He's a Democrat. I don't agree with 95% of what he says. But that guy, well-spoken, way clearer than Kamala Harris, but they wouldn't make him her running mate, probably because he would outshine her.
I was just wondering what kind of crease he has in his trousers.
Yeah, exactly right. But, the Democrats, they continually choose people. And they're, I've seen some stuff online where Jazzy Jasmine Crockett and AOC are going to be the ticket in 2028. God, I hope so. Please let that be the ticket. Well, my friends, we've pretty much burned up another busy broadcast day on Open Line Friday. Don't forget about Weekend Update tomorrow on the podcast. It's going to be a great show, so don't forget about that. As always, make sure that you subscribe and follow the program. That way you can be notified every single time there's a brand new episode. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. Have a good weekend, my friends. We'll see you Tuesday.